Events that seemed unrealistic just a few months ago continue to unfold in the Russian Federation. Z-bloggers, writers, war correspondents, and other propagandists criticize the Russian government led by Vladimir Putin literally every day. Z-blogger Ilya Remeslo, recently released from a mental hospital, continued to criticize the Kremlin dictator. In a recent interview with journalist Ksenia Sobchak, he bluntly stated that only one person is to blame for all of modern Russia's problems, Putin. According to him, he's not alone in holding this view, but also many people even in the president's inner circle, including members of his administration. Remeslo is also confident that Putin's fate is a foregone conclusion. Within the next couple of years, certain quiet events will occur in Moscow, resulting in a change of power in the country. At the same time, the blogger clarified that this wouldn't be a major revolution or military coup, as Prigozhin had planned. It would happen almost unnoticed, but ultimately, power would transfer to other people. But while Putin and one or two of his closest associates want to keep fighting, Russia's elites don't. They may pretend to support his war in Ukraine, and are happy to profit from it, but they desperately want the hostilities to end. Why is this so? First, remember that post-Soviet elites in Russia have never been motivated by nationalism or any other ideology. Their one abiding interest has always been money. For that reason, it is important to realize that corruption in Putin's Russia is not just endemic, it is the foundation of the entire system. True, Putin has always encouraged this pilfering of Russia's wealth because it created a totally loyal government bureaucracy. It is a system in which everyone is complicit and has a stake in its survival. Not only were Russian elites stealing, but they were sending their capital abroad, to the tune of well over $1 trillion. The money stolen from the budget or taken as bribes have been converted to luxury properties in London, Miami, the French Riviera and elsewhere. Even the guardians of Putin's regime, the FSB, the GRU, and other security agencies, are primarily interested in stuffing their own pockets, not doing their job. Prior to attacking Ukraine, Russian spy agencies were allocated huge budgets for suborning Ukrainian officials and building up the fifth column inside the country. That was supposed to lay the foundations for an easy victory once the invasion started. In actuality, the funds were misappropriated, and none of the subversive cells existed. The failure of Putin's blitzkrieg in Ukraine was also the result of widespread corruption in the Russian military. Russia allocated as much as $65 billion to modernizing its armed forces prior to the war. But it turned out that the Defense Ministry spent money on producing sleek Hollywood-style videos of airborne special forces jumping out of helicopters to impress Putin, while the rest of the money went to construct the top general's private villas. All of that puts Putin in an even worse pickle. He must be realizing that his problem isn't just that most of the sizable investments made available to overpower Ukraine were wasted. In a statement that circulated widely inside Russia, Remeslo said, "Vladimir Putin is not a legitimate president. Vladimir Putin must resign and be prosecuted as a war criminal and a thief." He accused the Kremlin of wasting trillions of dollars that we could have used to build cities, schools, children's hospitals, and completely overhaul the housing and utilities sector. Instead, he said, the authorities are mostly building the president's and his friends' palaces. The once staunch supporter said Putin and his inner circle had gone mad, pointing to long-standing poverty in what he called the richest country, where tens of millions of people are poor. According to his account, the authorities are now depriving people of their basic rights while pushing the opposition abroad, or completely underground, and branding critics as foreign agents. One of the sharpest parts of his critique focused on digital repression. Remeslo said the current restrictions on mobile internet, particularly in Moscow and at the front, amounted to a betrayal of a personal promise Putin allegedly made to him in 2017 not to follow China's heavily controlled model. Putin then replied that we wouldn't follow the Chinese path, and he lied, he claimed. He argued that mobile internet doesn't even work in major Russian cities and that all Western social networks and messengers are blocked. He said Telegram is already blocked at 80% and alleged that a full block is planned for April 1st, though this timetable has not been confirmed by independent reporting. In his telling, Russians are being herded into using a state-approved messaging platform called Max, which he said is owned by a member of Putin's family and allows the FSB security service to monitor communication. Remeslo also mocked the president's longevity and grip on power. He noted that ex-KGB officer Putin will turn 74 this year and has ruled since 1999, then quipped that he plans to stay on the throne until he's 150 at least, alluding to what he described as Putin's obsession with medical procedures. Quoting the old maxim that absolute power corrupts absolutely, he argued that even a morally flawless person would be deformed by such an arrangement and that Putin wasn't always like he is now. In his view, a turning point came after 2003, when many of us supported him, but everything has its limits. Russia now needed a new modern president, he said. Remeslo went further, accusing Putin of craving endless wars, in which his children and relatives don't participate, and dismissing the president's televised call-in shows as a complete circus detached from the country's problems. He rejected official rhetoric that the West is preparing a third world war against Russia as preposterous, insisting no one is calling for war against Russia and that the current conflict is fought solely for Putin's ego complexes. He said, Putin is afraid of participating in debates, honest elections, because then it would immediately become clear that the king is naked. Conclusion: Vladimir Putin is not a legitimate president. Vladimir Putin must resign and be prosecuted as a war criminal and a thief. Long live freedom. Member of the European Parliament and political scientist Ivar Zijib said in an interview with the Lita news agency that it is doubtful that generals in the Russian army could mobilize to overthrow dictator Vladimir Putin. In his view, there are certainly individuals within the armed forces who do not think highly of Putin and are not enthusiastic about his regime, but these are not people capable of organizing themselves collectively. The MEP believes that generals would be afraid even to discuss the possibility of overthrowing Putin, because if someone reported such conversations to the security services, it would mean the end of their life and career. At the same time, the politician does not completely rule out the possibility that generals could overthrow Putin. Such a possibility cannot be excluded. In fact, it is good that we do not know about it. If we did, it would already be over, he added. He also argued that Russia is clearly moving toward a development scenario similar to that of North Korea, a state that is fully closed off and aggressive toward the outside world.